Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Dev. Minecraft has been regaining popularity recently, and seeing it return has really made me want to take another crack at our own Minecraft related shenanigans. Only instead of trying to simply recreate Minecraft, why don't we demake Minecraft? Indeed, we're gonna try our best to convert the gameplay of Minecraft into a 2D format. Today we'll be specifically focusing on block placement. And while that sounds and looks easy on paper, I think the conversion is gonna take a great deal more thought than it may seem. So let's not waste any more time and get to the coding. Now, some work was done before I started recording. We'll be using the same top-down movement code we've been using for what feels like forever, but slightly modified. And as you can see, we've already got some graphics done. Also, just in case we need it, I've coded in a simple zoom feature for our camera. Now, before we can get to the block placement, let's talk graphics. We'll start by adding a few walking sprites. Now, I've been wanting to do this since the GameMaker 8 days. I know that for a fact because these sprites are that old. I'm not sure why I drew Steve in a hoodie, but considering that the original was colored whites and grays, I think I had planned for custom hoodie colors. Regardless, I use an array to determine which sprites should be loaded. Each direction is given a value which correlates to the array number, and in the case of the side view, I simply had the sprite mirrored, since our character design is generally symmetrical. And there we had it, a 4-way animated 2D Steve in a hoodie. If all else fails today, at least we'll have that adorable little guy to look at. And so now that our player was a little more animated, we could get to the real reason I wanted to work on this project, the block placement. Now, I could have gone with the 2D side-scroller approach. It's been done before, and many games have done well to translate the features of Minecraft into their own gameplay. But I haven't seen many, if any, that have tried from a top-down approach. And likely for good reason. It's probably really hard, and that's why I decided I wanted to go with the top-down style. I wanted to go with the isometric style initially, but not only am I bad at math, but our last outing with an isometric game was quite the headache. So before we start running, let's at least try walking first. So first we needed to create our block object. I gave it a type variable and tied the image index to that type variable. We only have one block type for now, but it never hurts to do some preemptive work. I then had the block drawn with an extra tip, which will help sell the visual style. Indeed, not very necessary, but I like style. Anyway, and now that we've got our block object created, it was time to spawn them into our world. In the cursor object, I set up two variables, a placement boolean and a placement type. Again, we only have one type for now, but we're doing some preemptive work here. In the draw event, I drew what would be the chosen block, along with its tip, and the outline effect to help with the block placement. I then added two variables to keep track of the placement position and had them track the mouse's position based on a 16x16 grid. A quick test showed that so far things were looking pretty good, so it was time to actually spawn something in. Going back to the cursor code, I set up a left click check. When pressed, a block would spawn at the X and Y placement coordinates. I then shortened the variables because who needs long variable names? And testing again showed everything was working just as I had hoped. Well, I mean, we were able to place a block every 16 pixels, but clearly there was a discrepancy. There is a noticeable vertical gap between blocks. And to fix this issue, I wanted to introduce Z positioning, which is weird considering that this is a 2D game, but a Z position would be required if we want to stack blocks like in Minecraft. So checking for a collision between mouse and block, I wanted blocks spawned on other blocks to increase its Z position. This would then offset the block's visual Y position, reflecting the visual effect of the stacked blocks. I ended up spending a lot of time here figuring out why GameMaker was giving me so many issues with my collisions. Turns out because I inadvertently tried cutting corners, the code was unreliable, and so I kept getting errors. Eventually I got something working, and so we were able to finally stack blocks. Well, kind of. And this is where the difficulties of converting Minecraft, a 3D product, into 2D exist. Determining where we want to place a block in relation to other existing blocks gets very complicated very quickly. Do I want to place a block above the block below or next to the block above? In an attempt to make them less hypothetical, I changed the code to be less cosmetic and instead physically had the blocks offset move them upwards based on Z positions. I also have the blocks collision masks to make placement even more precise, but to no avail. We were faced with the same, if not more, issues. In fact, as far as I can tell, verticality is almost impossible to manage with this art style. Here's a breakdown of what we're dealing with. A block's collision mask is half of its height. This is so we can place blocks behind, but if we place a block above, this causes a collision issue. We can no longer place a block behind because that collision space is taken up by the block above, and vice versa. There's no way to target specific blocks unless we add extra steps, thus ruining the flow of placing blocks, or taking creative liberties and thus possibly negating a faithful conversion. But then again, that's half the fun of this type of project. Not necessarily succeeding, but at least trying and seeing what works, what doesn't, and going with whatever happens. For me, I have some thinking to do, both on the approach and whether or not it's worth continuing this journey. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Let's Dev. So remember that if you like this video or enjoy Let's Dev in general, be sure to hit that like button. If you aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button and be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. And as always, be sure to leave your thoughts on our progress in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.